Good morning, this is Brigid, and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. And it's on the correct live stream today, because if those of you who said, what happened to you yesterday? Some of you did find me. I actually ended up over on the Katonia podcast channel by mistake, for the very simple reason that with my phone, you can't, and good morning, Melissa. It's very easy for me to flip between obviously if you have multiple Instagram accounts, you just hit the button and you flip between them, but I had everything set up really nice yesterday, except that I was on the wrong account. So anyway, I always feel like sometimes things like that happen for a reason. So there's a lot of people on Katonia, I think, who finally got to see what I was doing over here. And maybe that will bring some more people in, and good morning to everybody joining. So this morning, after that I literally finished recording it, and then I went, oh gosh, this is on Katonia podcast. It's not on Transition Life Coaching. Oh well, can't really do anything about it because it was done. But it is up on YouTube yesterday's if people didn't get to see it, or if they can check it out on the Katonia podcast one-word channel. You were in another dimension. That you're not really far afield with that. And thank you for that, because that's actually my segue into one of the first things I was going to talk about this morning, which is the fact that yesterday I had a session of what they call Rahani healing. And now, I mentioned this yesterday, and what Rahani is, I didn't really know what it was, and the descriptions that I've read of it would not have ordinarily been something I would gravitate towards, because it sounded a little light for me, because like I said, I tend to deal more with trying to help people deal with transition and change and navigating darker spaces and things like that. So this kind of seemed a little light to me. But I had a friend who had it done and contacted me and said, oh my God, this is like, you got to try this. So truthfully, they weren't trying to make me try it, but they had such a really good experience with it, they had to tell me about it. And so as soon as they were telling me about it, in my head, it was like, yeah, you got to get this. So I thought, okay. So I actually went and booked a session with a woman called Jennifer Masters. There's only, I think, I'm not sure, there's very few people in the United States who do Rahani. It's very popular in Europe. Apparently there's a lot of people in Ireland who do it. A lot of people in the UK who do it. I guess the Rahani convention or conference is usually in London. But I really just, for some reason, even though when I read about it, it was like, okay, they call up the angels of the pink ray, and I was like, that sounds a little, I'm not going to lie, that's how it sounded to me. That's not normally something that grabs my attention. Some people, I think, really like that because if they're thinking about, they want something, very light, and I'm somebody who kind of I like to temper it a little bit. I don't want to be too fluffy and off the ground, but when I was talking to Jennifer on the phone, the way she described it to me, she said, this is like Reiki 2.0, because you're a Reiki master. And people who are familiar with Reiki, I certainly know some of you on here are, really, Reiki is Japanese for universal energy. It's a system that was founded, really the founder was Makao Usui, which was probably well over 100 years now. In Japan, and people of course think that Reiki is much older, but it's really about accessing and channeling universal energy. Like any kind of healing modality like that, you are just a pass-through. Like basically you go for what they call an attunement, and the attunement basically opens you up. It opens up certain chakras. It opens up really the ones that are kind of up here and the ones in the palms of your hands. So you're able to send Reiki out this way. And the more advanced you get in Reiki, you learn about doing different Reiki symbols, and using those for things like distance healing, using them for people who do past life work and stuff like that. There's all different kinds. And then, of course, there's symbols that you use for attuning people to the master level so that they can teach it and they can pass it on. And I remember it was funny because Jennifer said on her site, she also had been a Reiki practitioner. And for her, she was like, trying to remember the symbols and everything. And I'm pretty sympathetic to that, because there's certain ones. There's the symbol for distance healing. That specific symbol has 23 strokes to it. So in your head, you're kind of going, you're trying to, it's a lot to remember. And when people do the master level, there is also one of the master runes that is also equally complex in particular. The other ones I don't really have too much of a problem with, but those two in particular, I'm like, crap. Like if I don't use them a lot, then then it's like I have to go back and like redraw them for myself and memorize them. So I think this does happen to a lot of people who do Reiki. But in any case, so I mean, Reiki I'm familiar with. I've done it for years. I've done it I've been master for 22 years. I've actually, I think first learned Reiki in the late 1990s. So I've been doing it longer than that. And I'm very familiar with Reiki in a lot of its iterations. I mean, no one can ever say all of it because you can't control what happens in a session. You do a session for somebody and you can do it via distance or in person. And that person will tell you how they feel. Typically, when you're doing this kind of work, there's the practitioner and then there's the receiver, and then you compare notes at the end of the session. You say, okay, how was that? How did you feel? Where did you feel things? And for some people, it's just a very, very calm kind of an energy. For other people, it's a really, excuse me, it can be a more dramatic kind of energy. Sometimes people have visions. Sometimes people see things. I have known practitioners to combine Reiki with other modalities. I've never particularly been a fan of that, especially when you're doing it as a service for somebody, because I don't know, it can be a mix and match. I mean, I know sometimes for people, like if they're doing, like I was just saying with the past life work, you could be working in that area, and then all of a sudden, like spontaneously, sometimes the Reiki practitioner will come out with something. They'll see something, or they'll experience something, and so yeah, when it's spontaneous like that, then you kind of do it. But we were always taught by my own Reiki masters that you tried not to do that. Like if you were working on somebody, like don't diagnose them because you could be medically liable. You don't want to. There's certain areas you want to be careful about getting into. Which is why it's really just promoted as a relaxation technique, because you can't say like, I'm going to do Reiki on you and this is going to be the result. Like you don't know. You don't know, because the person can come in with one issue and the Reiki energy, whatever, it seems to have an intelligence. Like it seems to know what it's working on. So it may not work on that issue at all. It may be, you may feel another area. You may say, oh, my stomach's bothering me, and it may go to your head. Like, you don't know, because you don't really know necessarily the source of what's going on with you. But the Reiki goes to where it's needed. So a lot of us are familiar with Reiki and the sort of the calming energy of Reiki. Now Rahani is different. And she said this is like Reiki, or she said Reiki on steroids. That's another way she put it. And I just thought, okay, well, my friend gave me a very good review of this, and I trust their opinion implicitly. And so I had this session, and what she did was we talked a little bit first. She said, well, what would you like to work on? And, and I talked about, certain things that I was working on. And so she said, okay, she goes, lay down in a comfortable place that's quiet. And she said, I'm going to hang up the phone, and I'm going to call you back in 30 to 40 minutes. I'm going to do it on my end, and I'm going to access your higher self, whatever, and then I'm going to do the healing, and because then you tell me how it was afterwards. I said, great. And oh my goodness, I was laying there, and again, you lay down, you're kind of trying to get comfortable, whatever, crack your shoulders, whatever it is you're going to do. And it was literally like all of a sudden, it was like, because she said, oh, you might have a tingling. And you think, oh, okay, a little tingling. It was like this wave that just hit from one side of my body, like all the way over to the other. I was like, what was that? And it was weird the way it worked, because it was like my whole right side was just like on fire. I mean, it wasn't burning, but it was like on fire, like tingling. And I was like, what is that? And it almost felt like, I told her it was like being on a wave, like of an ocean. And I was like, if sand was on one side, and if it was like there was a high tide on the other side, it was like this high tide was coming in and slamming the other side of my body. I was like, whoa. And then it kind of moved to other areas, and then it moved to a place where I frequently have problems, which is right here. And it was just weird. And I was seeing all these weird colors and things, and it was like, and not just like sometimes you close your eyes and you get that, how you get that kind of, if you've just been looking at light, you can get kind of a weird reflection. It was not like that. It was like boom. It was like bright flashes of light and stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, this is intense. This is definitely Reiki on steroids. And oh, hello, good morning, Virginia. This was Reiki on steroids, and afterwards, I mean, I'm not going to talk about what what Jennifer and I talked about after the session. But it was just mega intense. And she just said, watch your dreams tonight, watch it for the next couple nights, see what happens. And my dreams last night were, one of the things I was working on was, I have a very strong sense of insecurity about certain things, especially with regard to, being able, having enough materially and so forth. I mean, I am a Taurus. Okay. I mean, this is something that I go through. And, and I'm not used to working in a realm where I'm like, well, let's see what money comes in this month. I mean, that's not typically the way I've always operated. So, so I have issues around that. And of course I have issues around driving and stuff like that. And the dream, I mean, I woke up this morning with these really like massively, like almost panic-stricken dreams. And it was like the whole lower half of my body, from my legs down to my feet, was like in agony. It was in so much pain. And I woke up and I went, whoa, okay. That was really strange. But I realized, I said, no, but this is literally what you asked for at the beginning of the session. You asked to address this, and it's like, okay, here it is. So yeah, it's a very intense form of healing, and I actually intend to learn it, because I thought, yeah, this is definitely a useful tool. But it was really actually it's a good thing. I don't want to make it sound like that makes it a bad thing. It was actually a very, very good thing, because I feel like it's shifted some things that I've been having trouble shifting on my own. Because sometimes you can't. That is a thing. Like when you are doing healing work, even if you have all the tools to do the healing on yourself, even sometimes you do need somebody else to come in and do it for you and intervene in some way, just because in the same way that sometimes when you are making a decision about something and you're very emotionally caught up in it, say, or you just have a real, you may have a bias for any particular reason or a blind spot. Sometimes it's good to have an external person who can help you, who can be more objective and say, okay, well, this is what you're telling me, and this is what I'm seeing, which is also the kind of work I do in coaching for people. But people can do that with their friends and with other people. You always have somebody who you trust. You say, okay, you'll mirror this back to me and let me know whether or not I'm making sense or whatever. Like, people will do that. So so it's just very, very interesting, and it is one of those kinds of healing modalities that when you use it, it goes on and on and on. It's like, it's not like the session ends and it's not like, okay, that's the end of it. It just keeps working on you. And truthfully, Reiki does that as well. But this in particular is like, it's intense. Like, I woke up this morning, took some Advil because my legs were hurting, and and actually, like I said, I feel 100% better from that now. But and I did, of course, me, I sat down, I wrote everything down, I did my normal analysis and everything, and I said, the dream that I thought had a lot to do around masculine energy, or my connection to certain types of, and sure enough, the Animus card came up. I was like, yep, this is definitely something connected to that. But it was something fairly toxic, and just kind of pointing out that this was something probably that should be, I mean, I'm always for integrating material. I'm not necessarily for exorcising material from you. But this was something that was kind of like, yeah, this is a toxicity that you really don't want. I mean, this is something that you can toss this out. It doesn't go away. So anyway, when I get into, as I go on the journey with that, I'm sure I'll share more about that with you. The thing that that came up for me this morning was when I sort of was getting the idea of what to talk about this morning, was the idea of existence. And there's a card in this particular deck, and I don't know if I have it. I probably effectively shuffled it back in here, but it's basically the Magician card in this deck, and it is the card called Existence. And yeah, here it is. And this card is, you see the woman, she's sitting on what's supposed to be kind of like a lotus flower, and she's just looking at the stars. And the meaning of this card is that a lot of times we can be in a defensive mode about everything. We are kind of in a space where we feel, where we might feel that the world is out to get us. Okay, we may go out in our day-to-day lives and have certain interactions where it just seems like you kind of look and you're like, is it me? It's like you get in the car and drive and like everybody cuts you off and you're like, do I have a sign on the front that says cut me off? Like, you have this kind of, you have days like that, or where everybody just seems to want to be combative or give you an obstacle or get in your face about something, and you're like, And you have to wonder, you're like, what is it about me that makes you want to fight with me? Like what, you know, and it can make you, and it can really sour you and make you kind of feel like when you not wanting to even go out. Like this is why people kind of withdraw and are like, you know what? I think I'm going to avoid the world for a while. But these kinds of things happen all the time. I mean, I've talked a lot on this live stream about wounding and the way that, you know, life is almost like a continual wounding process for a lot of people. And as we get wounded, we wound and get wounded at the same time. I've talked a bit about that. But the existence card more or less is kind of like, look at the stars. So it gets back to that idea of you as being part of a larger system. So you want to stand back and say, okay, in the grand scheme of things, you know, what is the things that trouble me, the things that are that in my day-to-day life are really I feel like they're a source of conflict. There was another deck I had. It was another Egyptian deck that I use. I think it was the Temple of Isis deck. And I remember there was a phrase with one of the cards, and I don't remember exactly which one now, because it was a tarot, but it kind of did things differently. But it said, I think it was the card from Nuit, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the Night Goddess. And it said, think about whatever's going on right now. Like this is sort of meditation. Like what is the thing that you're worried about today going to matter in 10,000 years? That's sort of the meditation. Is it going to matter? And again, I say that a bit advisedly because I also think about the fact that you don't want to minimize somebody's burden. One of my friends used to tell me a story. His father was a minister, and his father used to tell this story that was about somebody walking with an angel and saying, "Oh, my burden is so great, you know, I want to put my burden down." So the angel says, "Okay, cool. Like, well, put your burden down," and like enters this big field of rocks and says, "Okay, you can pick up any other burden that you want. Like, we can drop yours, and you can take any other one that's in this field." So there's big boulders and there's things. So of course this person wants to look for and find the teeniest little pebble to carry around. So they look around and they go, "Aha, this one. This is the one I'll take." And the angel said, "Oh, that's the one you just put down." Right? And after the father would tell this story, the mother would look at him and go, "Stop minimizing my burden." You know? And so I'm very conscious of that as well, because I said you don't want to tell you don't when we have problems that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, they matter to us. Okay? They matter to us. They, you know, when certain things, you know, we are affected emotionally in certain ways. We may react in certain ways. And what we don't want to do is just have to say, well, I don't want to feel negative about everything, so I'm just going to, you know, pretend that everything makes me feel good. And well, it doesn't. I mean, but the thing is, can you kind of pass through these states and feelings and just kind of recognize that this is part of existence, that this is part of a bigger picture, you know, this is part of what that things happen, you know, things happen, period. And some days things are going to happen that we judge to be good things, and then there's going to be days that things happen that we judge to be bad things. And the question is, how well do you just sit and say, this is all just part of what is? And I feel like the existence card, they say, go out and look at, you know, the meaning of the card in the book for the Osho Zen deck is, if you feel the world is out to get you, go outside and look at the stars. So, because sometimes, you know, again, we all have things that bother us, but then the question becomes, to what degree should we allow certain things to drain our energy? That's the other piece of it. And it's a balancing act. You can't say, you can't make a blanket statement for people or a blanket judgment. I mean, blanket judgments are never good anyway. But you need to, in certain situations, it may be that sometimes you are over and over again being concerned about something that isn't a concern. And good morning, Jenny. So yes, you may spend a lot of time worrying about things that are not that don't ever come to pass. And oftentimes, if you really kind of try to get back to the root of where this kind of, you know, chronic kind of things that come back for us, or that are continually repeated, they either come out of some kind of a past trauma or past bad memory, bad situation, They might come out of a past. They could, for all we know, come out of a past life. I mean, again, I'm recognizing that some people believe in that and some people don't, but it could well be something that is kind of in the soul, and it could be related to a lot of things. I mean, I think there factors in your environment. There could be factors in your just something in your psyche. And I don't believe the behaviorists that you're kind of a tabula rasa. I don't think that you're born with no context whatsoever, and it's all strictly your environment that puts everything on you. I think you come in with, you're dealt a hand, so to speak. You come in and you already have a set of characteristics. That's why I tend to believe that we either don't live one time, or we are living across multiple timelines. I don't necessarily always think of it in terms of past, present, future. I always think of it across as almost like a multiverse. Like we may be existing in many different ways, but we also may carry over attitudes from all of those different places to where we are now. So I mean, none of us, absolutely knows. So, but that's kind of the way that I feel about it. And whatever it is, I mean, what we have can come from our environment, but there's a whole lot that comes from within us as well, and how we are interpreting things, and also how we're interacting with the collective. The collective is almost always left out in modern therapies, because when I've been doing grief counseling courses, that's one of the things that would come up, with just the idea that there's cognitive approaches, or there's the Freudian approach, which gets into your childhood and things like that, and what's in the subconscious. But it doesn't really. But it still doesn't go as far as the Jungian approach, which says no. Well, it's not just your own subconscious. It's what yours, and how it connects to the consciousness of everybody else around you, and how it connects to the bigger picture. Again, back to this idea of the bigger picture, and how that connects in. This is where dreams come in and things like that. I mean, there's just too much material that comes in that is not just like, oh, well, you remembered this from somewhere. A lot of times you don't. Small example, the dream I had that I talked about a few live streams ago, where I had the Ola and Nala. I'm sure I've heard the word Nala before as being connected to the term for queen. Never heard of Ola before, never. And the fact that it was connected to something ancestral, I was like, oh, okay. It made sense in the context of the dream, but I didn't know that. I can't say anybody ever told me that before. So it's not all about your memories, I guess, is what I'm saying. There's a bigger system and a bigger picture, and I think the reason that was coming up this morning was just, make sure you see what you want to look at, the bigger picture in a lot of situations. At the same time, that doesn't disenfranchise or minimize, I guess is really the right word, whatever it is that you're going through, because whatever somebody's going through, it's important to them. And to try to say, well, we've often heard it stop complaining because people in this area have it worse than you. And objectively speaking, that might be true. I mean, we don't live, say, in a war-torn. We're not in Gaza right now. We're not in Ukraine. We're not in. We're not in some of these places, or maybe some people are. I don't know. But if you're not living there, if you're like in the U.S. or one of the European countries, I mean, there's certain sets of problems that we may be dealing with. On a more collective level, but you might just say, well, be grateful that you're not in this situation or this situation, and and I'm of two minds about that, because again, it's fine to put things in context and be grateful for what you have, but by the same token, you also don't want to get into the shaming thing of saying, well, you don't have it that hard, so you shouldn't be complaining about things, and that to me that's the sting that should not be there. It's like, no, if this is important to you right now, then it's important to you right now, and you just shouldn't just be, well, suck it up. I mean, because the more that you suck it up, the more that it just kind of almost accumulates in your system, and you don't. And then at some point, it could take this very, very tiny thing that will just completely set you off about something, and it's because of all these times that you have shamed yourself out of, in the interest of being strong, that you have shamed yourself out of really dealing with what it is that you are, or just, confronting what it is that bothers you. And so, yeah, so I'm not big on minimizing people's burdens, but sometimes as people reflect on it and put things in context, or able to put it in a bigger picture, and maybe it is not as powerfully upsetting to you. But it's something else to think about too. Like when I'm dealing with people, if people are going through something that maybe I have been through myself before, it's very easy to say, it can be a knee-jerk reaction to want to say, oh, well, this is all you have to do. And because you're already past it, you kind of, you can kind of almost dismiss it, because you say, well, this is just this thing, and you'll get over it. But see, the person's going through it. And while they're going through it, you can't be sitting there acting like, it's just because I've been through it doesn't mean they have, just because I have experienced this thing doesn't mean that you will, you're necessarily having the same experience, or that, the fact that I had it doesn't have it for you, we do that with a lot of people. And this is all part of the thing of projection. You have to make sure you understand what you're projecting and where your projections are. And also sometimes in advising people, you have to be very, very careful. I mean, I can share my experience with somebody and say, okay, well, I went through this thing and this is what happened for me. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the answer for them either. So kind of relating this idea of context, looking at the bigger picture, but also not ignoring what's in front of people, what's important to you right now. I mean, yeah, you yourself might look back and go, I can't believe I was so concerned about that. But that's a conclusion for you to get to. Other people shouldn't shame you into that conclusion, like you're being stupid or something. At the same time, sometimes knowing that other people are going through what you're going through doesn't make you feel quite so alone either. So it's very, very interesting dynamic when it comes to dealing with our conflicts. How they affect us, how they are mirrored back to us from other people, how they fit into the bigger context of things, and how we ultimately have to negotiate them. But there's really no avoiding going through them. I mean, I guess there is an avoiding going through them, but that doesn't tend to solve it. It just kind of tends to kind of put it to the back burner for the time being. And sometimes, depending on what else may be going on in our life, we may have to do something like that. But ultimately, things come around, and when things continually come around, it's the kind of business that we need to clean up. Certainly, one of the things I've seen astrologically lately for a lot of people, and in the readings I've done, is that this is definitely a time for cleanup for a lot of people. We're cleaning up old business, we're releasing old stuff, and trying to see where... in other words, you don't want to go step into the future until you've resolved what you've had outstanding in the past. So, excuse me. So let me do our reading for today. Half an hour goes by so quickly. I could try to make these to an hour, but I feel like that might be too long for some people, especially if they're getting ready for work and stuff, so... Maybe I should make it 45 minutes and split the difference. Okay, so let's see what our cards are for today. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. Alright, so our first card for today is the Two of Wands. This is the Possibilities card, okay? And so we see the eagle flying here sort of over the mountains. And yeah, so Possibilities is about, it's literally just about what I said, taking the broad view. Like looking at what the possibilities are of a situation. Oftentimes when we're in a situation where maybe we feel trapped, and that's a lot of times where the frustration comes in. We feel like we're trapped in a particular situation. I can't see my way out. I can't see my way forward. And this is saying, well, when you're in a situation like that, consider the possibilities. And the possibilities are often only limited by our sense of, I can't consider that possibility because these three factors are in the way, or whatever it is. And the question then becomes, well, what I always tell people to do is, well, pretend those factors aren't in the way. Pretend you can do whatever you want. Pretend money's not a factor. Pretend time's not a factor. Pretend your job's not a factor. Like, what are the possibilities there? And sometimes when you just start brainstorming. I mean, maybe everything's not possible that you want to do, but maybe there are steps you can take towards something, or maybe there is a way to look at something differently. And sometimes when you share your possibilities with people, other people may have a way that you have not thought of. Okay, so the inner feeling of which we're unaware here is change. Okay, this is the change card, and this is the Wheel of Fortune. And so I think for a lot of people, there's a profound change going on, and it's not self-initiated. Okay, it's not something that you are consciously doing. And it may be in your internal life, or it could be in your external life. Again, as I've said, usually I don't make that much of a distinction between the two. What's going on externally is often a reflection of what we consider to be internal, and external is really a perceptual thing. It may not be quite as separated as that, but our perception is separated. So there's changes that are going on, and there are changes that are not changes that you can control. Okay. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but the external feeling of which we are aware, and this is a theme that's come up recently too, and I'm trying to remember who brought it up to me. I don't remember, but this card is the Six of Cups, and this is known as the Dream card. Okay, now what the fascinating thing about this is, I feel like this was some family discussions and not just mine. Like there's been multiple ones, but this is the card of the rescuer. And it's the person who feels that they have to come in and take control and rescue somebody, or like with the dream, there's the idea that somebody's going to rush in and rescue me. Okay, and this is an idea that we get. It's a trope, certainly, when it comes to relationships. I call this like the Cinderella trope, where you think Prince Charming's going to come along and marry you, and now life's going to be perfect, and you're gonna go off and ride to your royal castle, and that's going to be it. And as we all know, even in the best marriages, it's not like that. The reality of human existence is not quite the fantasy that we think it is. Not that you can't enjoy those kinds of things while they happen, but the dream seems to suggest that, and it doesn't have to be about romance. I mean, even though this kind of shows a kind of girl like wistfully looking at this romantic couple here, it can also be about the way in which we want to be rescued from, just any kind of a situation. Like, okay, I have financial problems. I'm going to play the lottery. I'm going to win millions of dollars, and that's what's going to rescue you, right? I've talked about certain personality types that are rescuer types, and some people, and again, I think all of us have a certain we all have a certain impulse to want to help people, and if we see someone's in trouble and we can do something to help, then we might want to do that. But but there's also cases where you'll have people who try to put you in a sense of obligation. So they're going to come in and they're going to take care of this for you, but now you already know that you owe this person in a way, that you're now under a sense of obligation. And especially if someone sweeps in and does it without you, first of all, without you saying you needed this or wanted this, and then turns around and kind of makes a show of, look what I did for you. Then it's almost like indicating like, well, I did this for you because I expected something. And that's something you have to kind of watch out for there. I think I remember the conversation, but I was talking to somebody about the myth of Achilles in the Iliad. And anybody who is, I teach the Trojan War, but it's just, the Iliad is in the beginning of it, there's a quarrel between the two Achaean generals, who are Achilles and Agamemnon. And Achilles, as a result of this quarrel, Achilles is insulted and he drops out of the war. He just kind of goes back to his ship and says, I'm not helping you guys. But at some point they realize they need him. So Agamemnon shows up with like almost like a ransom, like it's a huge, gifts like of all kinds of stuff, and offers him to give, there's a fight over Achilles' concubine. I'll give you your concubine, and I'll give you this, and I'll give you this. And Achilles just said, get out of here with your gifts. Because he said, you're trying to put me in a position of obligation. And that's kind of a thing that I feel there. You're trying to work. Yeah. Jenny, you're saying, we were saviors. Yeah. And that's the thing. That is something that I tend to feel very cautious about, maybe because I've also know that there's some family patterns of that as well for certain people in my family, where they want to save, they want to rescue you, and it's like I've always been very much, I don't want to be rescued. And people coming to you aren't necessarily looking to be rescued either. They may be looking for help, but it's also, you're not, even though a person may say to you afterwards, like, wow, what you did really helped, and, which is great. I mean, that's awesome when that happens. But you have to also recognize, and also especially doing this kind of work, that you're not a savior to somebody. You're not there to be their Jesus Christ or whatever. You're there to be, you're somebody to help guide them, help show them the way, what might be the way forward for them. Ultimately, though, that path and decision has to be theirs. And if they don't, you can't pressure somebody to do that. It's Jenny saying we're just doing our jobs. Well, yeah, I mean, right. I mean, right. You come in and you provide the message, and the message is either accepted or not accepted. And that's ultimately, we can't feel personally about that, because even sometimes when you see something that somebody's going through, kind of like what I was just saying earlier, you see it, but you can't, just because you can see it doesn't mean they can see it yet, or that they're ready to make a change or to let go of something. Example from my personal life, when my marriage was not going well, there was a lot of people who were like, this marriage, you actually need to get out of this marriage. This is not a good marriage. I was not ready to do it at the time. Those people were ultimately correct, but at that time, I couldn't do it. It's just like somebody going through a particular process. You have to let that person go through their process, okay? It's not about rescuing people. And sometimes when you, especially in certain family situations, you can go in and keep rescuing somebody, and that person never actually learns. They just assume somebody's going to rescue them, and they never actually engage in the kind of behaviors or move forward in a way that they need to, because somebody always catches them when they fall. And it's like sometimes that fall is what teaches somebody, like, okay, this is what I need to do. So, and the card we have here is control. So this is right back to it. We don't want to try to control situations. Okay, it's and a lot of times it is something, because when we work on a particular situation, we don't want to get into a mechanism of control. That there's a lot that is out of our control, and especially if you're somebody who's doing spiritual work, you have to recognize that there's other things. Right. People have to figure it out for themselves. This is what Jenny's saying on here. You have to reach a point where you also have to recognize that there are other forces that you may have an awareness of some of them, but maybe not all of them. And you kind of have to let the bigger picture take care of things. Okay. And ultimately, we have the other card, mind. And I think this is a perfect illustration of why I tell people that rationalizing things is not the best way to do stuff, because we just get ourselves in a tangle. You can rationalize anything. You can rationalize stuff that is just absurd. The mind can find a way to rationalize. It's not always the way to go. There has to be this sort of combination of not only rational thought, but kind of combining it with our instincts and our feelings, which are also trying to give us information, but as I've said, which we frequently ignore. So overall, I feel like the message that we're getting today is, looking at possibilities and recognizing that you're part of a larger system. I think that's what it is. We think that somebody's going to come in potentially and rescue us, which, it's like, again, there are people that aren't supportive and helpful, but it's not about being rescued. It's about figuring out, what are you going to do? Ultimately, your destiny is your path is your thing. And if somebody looks at something and says, gee, this seems like the way you should be going, you could say, okay, but then if something inside of you isn't ready to do that, then you just, you go with that. But this is about yielding control, and it's about dropping the mind. Two things that are incredibly, incredibly hard to do, because we always feel that we always must be under control, and that we must always, we always must be rational and sensible about everything. And while with some things, I mean, that may be generally good advice. There's a lot of areas in which, we try too hard to control situations, and we really need to drop into to yield control. That's what I think the message is here, and that's probably why the existence card's what came into my head this morning, because it was like the idea of don't stop trying so hard. That's the message. Stop trying so hard. Stop trying so hard. Just let things play out the way they're supposed to play out. And sometimes we're not ready to do that. I'm like, well, okay, I'm sitting here, nothing's happening. Oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? That's where your mind starts to get involved. And sometimes it's like, just leave it. Like, see, you don't have all the information yet. See what's coming. I get that card a lot in Cartouche. I get the Nephthys card, which is like, you don't have all the information yet. You don't have all the information yet. Wait and see what's going to happen. So I feel like that's the message today. Maybe it's just for somebody watching. Maybe it's just some good general advice, especially if you start to get yourself into a mental tangle and start worrying about decisions you're making or where things are going. Sometimes it's just like, wait, just see what's going to happen. See how things play out, because you are, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are, you are part of a larger system, and that larger system can, you're being carried along with it. Back to Alan Watts again. He always talked about like Zen masters arguing about whether or not when a boat moves, whether you are moving the boat or whether the wind is moving the boat. Like which is the force that's actually doing something. And he says the people who are the most successful are the one that allows the force that's already don't actually do anything. They just use the force that's already there, and they go with it. When you try to fight and paddle upstream against something, it doesn't. It isn't necessarily helpful. Or all you do is drain yourself and wear yourself out, and when you could just allow yourself to be carried by wherever the current is taking you, because ultimately we go where we need to go. So okay, so it's almost 7:15. So I just wanted to say thank you guys very much for joining me. I do have appointments today, so I'm gonna get on to those and get ready. But I do hope you enjoy these. And okay, you're welcome, Melissa. You have a good day too. And and so we will, meet again tomorrow. And yeah, I'm still a little like ungrounded here from yesterday, but anyway, I will be back here again tomorrow, so feel free to join me if you would like. If not, then, like I said, recordings are always available. I will have them here, and hopefully not on the other channel like yesterday. But, and then I will also post them on YouTube on the Liminal Tarot channel, which is youtube.com/@liminaltarot5130, all one word. All right. Right. You're welcome, and everybody have a good day.